Hi everyone, this is Howard. Welcome to another StarTalk Tuesday. This Tuesday being August 25th, 2020. Okay, so after a bunch of meteor showers, comets, um, what we have this week is a nice, relaxing, and spectacular view of one of the best parts of the sky and some pretty dominating objects, Jupiter and Saturn. Of course, later on in the evening we have Mars. And while we could get very specific about a lot of things in the sky, I just happened to be out, I don't know, about 10:30 the other night, and there was a stretch of the sky that just looked truly spectacular to me, and I thought, well, I'm going to take the time to talk about this. So uh, let's go ahead and dive into it. We're going to go ahead and accelerate our clocks ahead. Again, I'm pretty inaccurate with this timing on the sunset, so I'm going to try and keep this at a slower pace. Looking to the west, of course, we always love our digital sunset. You can see that the moon is out. There we go. And there's our little flicker. There we go. We can see that the sun has gone down. It's still a little bit of a glow. I like to start with a little bit of an early evening twilight time. This is usually one of my favorites. This is also when the mosquitoes happen to be out in force. So you'll want to prepare for that. But the early evening like this is just absolutely beautiful. We've got a few bright stars scattered through the sky, and we have the first quarter moon tonight. That's generally the moon is a bright object and can spoil sometimes our views of fainter objects in the sky, but the first quarter is traditionally a really good time to enjoy the moon from an observer's perspective because it isn't too bright. You have a beautiful terminator there, and lots of texture along the moon becomes very visible along that edge. So this would be an excellent night to look at the moon, as well as the central region of the Milky Way that will become a little bit more apparent, at least the star formations found in the constellations that we see here along Sagittarius and Scorpius. And then, of course, Jupiter and Saturn. And I'm going to turn off those meteor showers. There we go. And then later on, Mars will become rising up out of the east. But it's still kind of early right now. So for early evening observing, the moon makes the best target right now. So let's quickly jump into the moon. So I'm going to go ahead and center that. And now we're just going to zoom in. And you can see, there we go. There's our first quarter. Not too far away is that very bright star right there. That's Antares. That's the heart of the Scorpion. Let's go back to the moon and bring it in a little bit more. So here's our first quarter moon, and this is our terminator here, and it's right along the terminator where you can see the greatest amount of shadow. Of course, from this perspective, if you want to consider it in this context, if you were actually standing right there at that particular location on the moon at the terminator, what you'd be seeing, of course, looking in this direction is sunrise. So, and if you think of that in that context on planet Earth, that's when the shadows on the Earth would be the longest. When the sun is rising up out of the east, the shadows stretch into the west, and when the sun is setting into the west, the shadows stretch into the east. Of course, so here at sunrise, the shadows will be longest. And so when we look along the terrain features here, the enormous texture of the moon comes out and reveals itself through these extreme shadows right along the terminator. And this is kind of slicing the moon in one of the most interesting areas all along the terminator. Lots and lots of craters and valleys, all kinds of things to offer incredible viewing opportunities with telescopes and even binoculars. Now, I'll bring that back out. There we go. Not too fast. And now, let's go ahead and bring it a little bit later into the evening. And we can see satellites flashing through the view. Actually, I'm just curious what that is. We just saw that flash through the view. Oh, that's Atlas Centaur. That's actually, yep, that's a satellite. So that was a pretty bright object. If you wanted to, we can, let's bring that backwards. That's what I love about this, just spontaneous stuff here. This was not planned. So as you're looking, this is right around 8:30 in the evening. Looking to the south, you'll see this relatively bright object tracking through the sky. You might, I don't know exactly how bright this will be. According to this, it looks fairly bright to me, but I don't think it'll compare to the ISS. All right, so now here we are. This is real time. This is 8:30, and we're looking at just, oops. Let's bring this in. There we go. And this is real time. This is how fast you'll see this thing trekking across the sky. And so this is Atlas Centaur 2. This clearly is a satellite, but it's fairly bright. I wonder if the ISS will show up. And that's the wonderful thing about Stellarium is that if you're not sure, you can certainly run the program and it will let you know, like it's letting us know right now. So anyway, that's an extra added bonus there. We got Atlas Centaur passing through the view. Let's take that off, and now we'll just go ahead and press on through the evening. We want to get it nice and dark. I'm going to bring this right up to right around 10:30. Okay, there we go. So we're right around 10:35 right now. So the moon is sunk a little bit into the sky. I'm going to bring this down a little bit. There we go. What we have now is this beautiful part of the Milky Way. And we'll throw the constellation lines up so you can see where they are. Here's the curving tail of the Scorpion. There's the teapot of Sagittarius, giving away the Centaur there, the Archer. And trailing right behind, it's always kind of funny to do this. There we go. We've got Jupiter and Saturn just trailing right behind Sagittarius's backside there. And the Milky Way kind of snaking its way up through all of this. And let's get that artwork out of the way now. This is the view that I was looking at the other night. I'm going to just bring this out a little bit. There we go. And from relatively dark skies, there's this spectacular chain of objects here. What we have is the center of the Milky Way galaxy. We have Jupiter and Saturn, the bright stars of Scorpius and Sagittarius. Then we have the summer triangle here. Now, two of the three stars are showing up. So we've got Altair, Vega, and this is Deneb, as you can see by that name. And these three stars make up what's known as the summer triangle. Now, just take that off for a moment. Maybe the asterisms will show up. Yep, there's the triangle. These lines represent, you can't turn on just one, you got to turn them all on. So you can clearly see there's the fish hook and there's the teapot. But here we have what's known as the summer triangle, and this one up here also happens to be the one of the parts of the layout of Cygnus the Swan, but it also makes another asterism known as the Northern Cross. So here, this summer triangle kind of sits right over this spectacular part of the Milky Way. We'll get rid of those lines again. And it's sitting right at the highest point in the sky, so it's very hard to kind of get it exactly right there. Oop, that was a little weird flash. And there we go. So we get right into this region, and you can see clearly there's a lot of emission nebula in this area. Telescopes could probably resolve some of those areas, but these are really wide field, faint clouds of gas. But looking into this region here, through this should be Albireo. Yep, that's Albireo. So right in this region, in the neck of the Swan, we get into what's typically associated as the star fields of Cygnus. It's just a rich collection of stars. A little segment of the Milky Way galaxy there that just looks truly awesome in a pair of binoculars. And so as you explore this region, what makes it so easy to find, of course, is the triangle there. There it is. And I want to go back to that really nice view there we had. There we go. So, center of the Milky Way galaxy, Jupiter and Saturn, the summer triangle, and then as we bring this over here, we've got Cassiopeia coming up over here. Sometimes it's better to see the artwork here. There we go. There's vain Cassiopeia staring into her mirror, looking at herself. There's her poor daughter, chained up, soon to become food for Cetus the sea monster. In any case, what we're looking at here is the region, of course, that tells the story of Andromeda and Perseus, vain Cassiopeia. The mythology, of course, represented in the artwork, but I want to show you what's there visually. And of course, the giveaway is Andromeda is visible, so you can clearly see right there there's a little faint fuzzy patch. So we're going to bring this over. Here we can see this long, big, beautiful stretch of our galaxy. And now some of the best parts of the sky are just creeping up right now. Now, look, there you go. There's Mars just creeping over the horizon. There's another serendipitous discovery. So Mars is just coming up over the horizon. And of course, for us, that means there'll be trees on the view. But this is around 10:40. So very soon we're going to be at opposition, and then as the sun is setting, Mars will be rising. So as we look over back into this direction, you could see there's the, and I'll put this up there. I think I keep putting this up. There we go. There's the asterism that's associated with the constellation of Cassiopeia. Some will call it a W, some will call it an M. Typically here in Florida we call it an M because we don't really see it looking much like a W. That's when it's below the horizon. But the W or the M is the helpful guide visualizing where this is. There's the Andromeda Galaxy right there. And now, Stellarium is clearly visualizing it in a truly spectacular way. That is the galaxy, and that is exactly how much space it occupies in the view. If you didn't realize this, it's about 6 full moon widths across. That's a pretty big view. But what you will see in a pair of binoculars or with the naked eye is generally the bright central core, this region right here. And it looks like a little faint oval of light. Now, as we get out far enough, there we go. See, now that's a little bit more, maybe that's a little bit too little for some folks to see, but you can just see there's a faint smudge there, and that's typically looking at the bright core. With a pair of binoculars, you can sort of enhance that view, especially if your skies are dark enough. But with a telescope, you can really make out some of those the dark dust lanes seen in this region along the galaxy. Anyway, so this is an absolutely, well, I don't want to actually, before I move on, I don't want to ignore, there's M33 just happens to be, we got this beautiful arrangement. Merak is also known as Beta Andromedae. It's sort of the orangish colored star that, if we put up the constellation lines, here's this is Andromeda. There she is. And Merak is the star that's in her waist region. And you can see the Andromeda galaxy is on one side of her waist, and the Triangulum galaxy is right over here on the other side of her waist. And they're almost equidistant from Merak as you look there. So that's why Merak is such a great guide. As you look at this, you can see that that star kind of falls almost in a straight line path, almost halfway in between those two galaxies. Relative to the smudges that you'll see, it almost looks like it's halfway. All right. So Mars is going to be coming up, and we don't want to ignore that. And of course, clearly there's Neptune marked, but this is a very challenging object. Unless you have a fairly large aperture telescope, I should say large. You can see this in an 8-inch or a 6-inch, but you need some. The nature of these objects being so far away and under powerful magnification, you'll want to be able to track and move this thing across the sky. Otherwise, you want to have some skill at moving a telescope in order to keep this thing in the field of view, because under relatively powerful magnification, these objects will slide from one side of the eyepiece to the other in just a few seconds because of the high level of magnification. This is when tracking mounts will really come in handy. Now, some folks with Dobsonians are really good at maneuvering an eyepiece, but it's really hard to transfer the view to someone else, because the moment you transfer it over to someone else, that thing is going to slip out of the view pretty quickly. So Neptune is, while it's there, and if you can get it into a tracking mount, it's not necessarily something that's normally accessible to just folks with binoculars or smaller aperture equipment. So it's there. But let's get on to Mars. So we'll go ahead and let's actually we'll put our lock onto Mars there. And now we'll move our clocks forward. And you can clearly see it's rising up fairly late. Now, we're past midnight now. And I think that's good enough. We're almost 1 o'clock in the morning, and I don't expect anyone to get up to see this. But what I want you to see, what's going to happen, is that this is August 26th now. But in the month of October, that's when Mars will be at opposition. And what opposition means is that relative to the Earth, or relative to the sun, the Earth will fall right in between Mars and the sun in a straight line path. That's what we would call opposition. So as the Earth moves around in its orbit around the sun, eventually it will find itself in a straight line path between the sun and the outer planet, all of the planets, the outer planets anyway. And so what we see is what we would call opposition. And that planet would appear to have a fully illuminated disk, and that would be, technically speaking, when it's closest, typically in the orbit around the Earth's orbit around the sun, it's its closest approach to that object. So when it's not quite at opposition, you can see something, the minor effect that it has, which is that it's not a fully illuminated disk. The metaphor is that when the moon is directly opposite the sun with the Earth in between, is that you get a full moon. Well, when the planet is directly opposite the sun with the Earth in between, meaning in this case Mars, then Mars will be like a full Mars. And so when we look here in August, it's not a full Mars, and you'll see what I mean visually by it's not quite full. So let's go ahead and zoom in. Oop, let's lock in on it first. There we go. As we lock in, there we go. We can zoom in, and you can clearly see there's a part of the planet's disk that you can't see. This area that's hidden in the shadow because we're at a slight angle relative to Mars and the sun, because it's just simply reflecting off the planet. But when Mars is at opposition, then, and in fact, let's do this. I'll just change the date. I'm going to stop time too. We'll just change the date so you can see what I mean. Here's this sliver here that's kind of hidden in the shadows. This is August. If we change the date to October, and it's already, actually, there's September and then October. There we go. So this is actually a little bit after. It's going to be October 13th, and we'll be talking about this later on. You can see a lot of action going on there. So on October 13th, there you can see Mars is at direct opposition, and what we have is a fully illuminated Martian disk. And so this is the benefit of opposition, is that you get a fully illuminated disk, and you can see a lot more. It'll be bright, and the closest it will be, at least to Earth in that orbit that time. Anyway, so now we're getting pretty late. Oh, and we need to change our date back, so we can go back to August 26th, which is well into the morning. There we go. So Mars has trekked halfway across the sky, and the sunrise isn't too far away. Now, if anybody heard that loud boom, of course I'm making this recording while there's a thunderstorm going on, and so you might pick up some thunder in there. That's just the thunder in the background, not the typical noise that you would hear in my house. It's not like my children breaking down the walls. Anyway, I think we have run out of time. Thanks again, folks, for joining us. We'll catch you all next time.